I read it again.
And again. My hands trembled. My breath caught. Who was she? And what truth was so dangerous it required murder? I sat on the edge of the bed, the paper clutched in my fist, trying to make sense of it. Was it a joke? A draft of a novel?
No.
The handwriting was Tom's. I'd know it anywhere. And the coldness of the words, they weren't fictional. They were a plan. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, replaying every moment of our marriage. The long silences. The way he avoided my eyes lately. The expensive perfume I once smelled on his collar. Perfume I didn't wear. I told myself to stay calm. To gather proof before I accused him. Because if I was wrong, I would destroy everything. But if I was right, I might save my life. The next morning, I began my investigation. Quietly.
Carefully.
Like a detective in plain sight. I called a school where Tom claimed he was meeting with clients. They had no record of his visit. I checked the mileage on his car, more than double what a normal workday would require. Then I visited the local diner, where he said he ate lunch. The waitress remembered him, but always with a younger woman.
Blonde.
Early 20s. Real nervous, she said. They sat in the corner booth every Tuesday. My stomach dropped. I asked her name. Emily, she said. Emily Porter. She teaches at Fairview High. That afternoon, I went to the library and looked up Emily Porter in the school directory. She was 23, a new English teacher, recently divorced, and, according to the gossip columns, seen frequently with a mysterious older man. I felt sick, not just because of the affair, but because of the note. And her. Was I the her? Or was Emily? Either way, I was in danger. I needed help. But who could I trust? Not the police. Tom was friends with the chief. Not my parents. They'd tell me to stay quiet, to protect the family name. So I turned to the only person I knew who stood for justice, Daniel Ruiz, a federal inspector who had recently moved to town after a major banking fraud case in Atlanta. I wrote him a letter, no return address, delivered by hand to the post office box he used for sensitive cases. I told him everything, the note, the affair, the suspicious trips. I ended with, I don't know who to trust. But if you can look into Tom Clark and Richard Hale at First National Trust, you may stop something far worse than theft. 2 days later, a knock came at my door. Inspector Ruiz stood there, hat in hand. Mrs. Clark, he said gently, let's talk somewhere private. We met at a park on the edge of town. I told him everything. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he said, you're not imagining things. This is serious. Financial crimes are often tied to violence when people try to cover their tracks. He asked me to keep gathering evidence, bank statements, travel records, anything unusual. I did. I copied Tom's calendar, photographed receipts, even recorded phone calls, using a small tape recorder hidden in my sewing basket. What I uncovered was worse than I feared. Tom and Richard were siphoning money from the bank's reserve fund, $500,000 over 6 months. They planned to wire it to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, then disappear to South America with new identities. And Emily? She was pregnant, with Tom's child. The final transfer was scheduled for Friday, November 14th. That was the day they would vanish. That was the day I would be left behind or silenced. Inspector Ruiz assured me federal agents would be ready. But I had one request. Don't let them hurt my children. He promised they wouldn't. The week leading up to the 14th was agony. I smiled at breakfast, kissed the kids goodbye, pretended everything was normal. But inside, I was screaming. On Friday morning, Tom kissed me and said, big day at the bank. Might be late. I nodded. Drive safe. As soon as he left, I called Ruiz. He's on his way. By noon, the call came. It's done, Ruiz said. Agents intercepted the wire transfer. Tom and Richard were arrested in the vault with the documents. I sank to the kitchen floor, tears streaming down my face. Not from sadness. From relief. They were caught. The money was safe. The town was saved. But my life in Fairview was over. News spread fast. Headline screamed, "Local bank manager arrested in $500,000 fraud plot." Neighbors whispered. Friends crossed the street to avoid me. Some blamed me, as if I should have known, should have stopped him. One woman said, "A good wife keeps her husband happy." As if love excuses betrayal. I packed our bags, took the kids, left the house unlocked. We moved to Washington, D.C., starting over with nothing but my sewing machine and $3,000 in savings. I found a tiny apartment above a laundromat in Capitol Hill. I got a job repairing uniforms at a dry cleaner. But I dreamed bigger. I had always loved fashion, sketching dresses as a girl, making prom gowns for classmates. So I started taking night classes at a community college. I practiced on donated fabric. Soon, word spread among local women that Marjorie Clark could alter a gown like magic. One day, a woman walked into the shop where I worked. She was pale, tired, holding a baby wrapped in a thin blanket. "Are you Marjorie?" she asked. I nodded. Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm Emily Porter." My breath caught. This was the woman who had stolen my husband, the mother of his child. I expected anger,
Shame.
defiance, but she looked broken. "I lost everything," she whispered. "When Tom was arrested, the school fired me. My family disowned me. I have nowhere to go." I stared at her, at the baby in her arms. A little girl. "What's her name?" I asked. "Clara," she said. "After your mother." I froze. How did she know my mother's name? "Tom used to talk about you," she said softly. "About how kind you were, how strong. He never deserved you." Something shifted in me. Not forgiveness,
Not yet.
but compassion. "You can stay," I said, "just until you get on your feet." I converted my spare room into a nursery. Emily helped around the apartment. We talked late into the night, about Tom, about choices, about second chances. Slowly, a bond formed. Not as rivals, as survivors. 6 months later, I rented a small storefront on H Street. I hung a simple sign, "Clark and Porter, custom dressmaking." Emily had a natural eye for design. I had the skill. Together, we created elegant, affordable gowns for brides, professionals, and debutantes. Our slogan? Every woman deserves to feel beautiful, on her own terms. Business grew. We hired 2 seamstresses, opened a second location, raised our kids together, my Linda and David, her Clara. We taught them honesty, resilience, that mistakes don't define you, what you do after does. 20 years passed. One afternoon, a man walked into the shop. Gray-haired, hesitant. Tom Clark. He had just been released from prison after serving 18 years. "Marjorie," he said, voice shaking. "I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted to see you. To say I'm sorry, not for getting caught, but for hurting you." I looked at him, the man who once held a knife to my future. "Apology accepted," I said. "But we're not going back. I built a life without you, and I'm proud of it." He nodded, tears in his eyes, and left. 5 years later, another visitor, Richard Hale. He was older, thinner, leaning on a cane. "I'm dying," he said simply.
Cancer.
"I don't have much time. But before I go, I want to make things right." He handed me a check, $100,000, from my estate, for the town, for the people I stole from. Then he smiled. "And my fiancé wants you to design her wedding dress. She's seen your work, says you're the best." I laughed. "I'll do it, but only if you promise to treat her better than you treated all of us." He agreed. The dress was ivory silk with hand-embroidered lace. I poured my soul into it. At the wedding, I watched from the back. Richard saw me, nodded, smiled, and for the first time, I felt peace. Not because of his redemption, but because I had survived. Over the decades, I've thought often about that note. If she learns the truth, end her. They thought the truth would destroy me, but it did the opposite. It freed me. It gave me purpose. Today, Clark & Porter is more than a business. It's a legacy. We run workshops for single mothers, teaching them sewing skills to start their own businesses. We donate 10% of profits to domestic abuse shelters. And every year on November 14th, I light a candle for the woman I was and the woman I became. My children are grown. Linda is a therapist. David runs a nonprofit for at-risk youth. Clara is a fashion designer in Paris. Emily and I still share tea every Sunday. We've buried our past, built a future. If you've ever been betrayed, used, or discarded, know this. You are not weak because you stayed. You are strong because you survived. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't anger. It's building a life so beautiful, so full of love, that the people who tried to break you can only stand in awe. If this story touched you, please hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your voice matters. And together, we can prove that resilience always wins.